and welcome back to the Narcissist Layer. I'm your host, Hope J. I am the founder and president of the Center for Hope of Western New York. At the Center for Hope, we offer hope, help, and healing from narcissistic abuse. We are a nonprofit organization with a mission to provide legal advocacy, mental health support, financial advisement, holistic healing services, and education to help you down the path from victim to survivor. You can find out more about our services by visiting our website at centerforhopewny.org. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Center for Hope WNY for helpful information on recovery from narcissistic abuse. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing one of our providers at Center for Hope of Western New York, Rachel Wexler. Rachel is our divorce coach, and she is a certified divorce coach who specializes in coaching women on how to navigate the complicated emotional particulars of divorce. She helps her clients become organized, credible, and prepared for the realities of the divorce process. Rachel works with clients at all stages, from those that are just contemplating the idea of filing for divorce to those who are overwhelmed by the financial piece of the process or are parents who are attempting to create or follow a parenting plan with a toxic ex-spouse. So Rachel, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And first, I want you to talk to our listeners a bit about your journey to becoming a divorce coach, number one, and then why you made the decision to join us at Center for Hope of Western New York.
Sure.
Okay.
I'd say the really quick answer is I'm what I needed 8 or 9 years ago when I got divorced. I didn't know that divorce coaches existed. And with divorce, you don't know what you don't know. And I made a lot of mistakes in my divorce. It ended up being a very high conflict divorce. And I didn't see it coming. I had no idea. My ex-husband is a toxic personality. And I really just had no idea how to navigate the process and was very overwhelmed. I'd been a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids for a bunch of years, so I wasn't working. And I also wasn't the one that handled any of the finances. My ex-husband is in the financial industry. And we'd been together since I was 17. So I had just never had the need to learn the ins and outs of all of our finances. And so I was really, really at a disadvantage when it came time for the divorce.
So just, if you can explain a little bit more, I think most people, including myself, when you and I first started talking, I think a divorce coach is kind of a new term, a new industry. And I don't know that most people really understand, how is a divorce coach different, or what sort of services does a divorce coach provide that is different than what you would get from your attorney, for example? Like you just initially, what you said, I am what I wish I had when I was going through my divorce from a toxic person. So what is it that you do and what you provide to clients that is helpful, what you would have needed is kind of
sure. So. What I explain is a divorce coach doesn't replace anybody in the divorce process. They help people navigate the process. It's actually been around for more than 10 years or so. It depends on the area. Some parts of the country, people are more knowledgeable about it than others. In fact, in some parts of the country, there are divorce coaches on the staff of larger law firms. So what we do is I work with clients wherever they're at to help them. If they haven't even decided yet, if they want to get divorced, sometimes they just need information about what does the divorce process look like and what types of things would they have to consider and would come into play, such as finances and sharing custody of children and things like that. It could be that they have gotten to the point where they know they're going to get a divorce, they don't know how you do that or how, what the different options are. One of the common misconceptions is people thinking that actually I can help them get divorced without an attorney or a mediator. And that is not the case. I do not replace attorneys or mediators. I cannot give legal advice. What I can do is I can give them information and I can give them explanations. So I am an impartial source to be able to explain to folks what the difference is between mediators and that there's different types of mediators and attorneys and collaborative law and litigation, and explain all the differences between the different methods and answer questions about what the different methods are and how they may or may not be useful to their situation. They may already have hired an attorney or a mediator, and then one of the first things they do is they hand you this net worth statement sheet and tell you to go home and fill it out. And for some folks that, and it was myself included, it's completely overwhelming.
No, I mean, I'm a divorce attorney, so
right,
I know the reaction that many clients have when I ask them to. It's a very cumbersome, very daunting, intimidating document. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, deer in the headlights. So I can help folks either break it down into more manageable pieces. I can help them. Sometimes there are people that don't know who pays who their mortgage is through, or even who their bank account is through. So I can help them figure out the answers to those questions that they'll need to figure out, whether it be, hand holding, helping them, figure out where to find that information, or just kind of chunking it down into smaller pieces and helping to, be by their side and hold their hand so it's not so overwhelming. Because I've been there and I understand that.
Rachel, you bring up a really important point about being by their side and holding their hand. Like I wanted to just kind of circle back, because I did ask a question that you didn't answer, and I think it's important that you answer it so we can segue into, a little bit more talking about the nuances of working with somebody who's recovering from narcissistic abuse, because that's, you're a divorce coach, you can work with all kinds of clients, but
Sure.
Working with us is working in the milieu of working with abuse survivors. So, you did mention that you had been in a relationship with an abuser. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do believe you said a toxic person. Was that any part in what had you feeling as if why you wanted to come on board and work with this population with Center for Hope?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A divorce for anybody is overwhelming, but when you're divorcing somebody who's not playing fair, who is using manipulation tactics, who is abusing you, and a lot of people aren't aware or don't realize that they're even being abused. We think of abuse as, bruises on your arm, but financial abuse is a real thing, and emotional abuse is a real thing. And I didn't even realize at the time. It wasn't until I got help from my therapist that I even recognized and realized it was all I knew. So I didn't know any different. And it puts you at a real disadvantage when you're going through a process that the other party's not playing fair. And there can be, there could be money hidden. There could be, the abuse could escalate. There could be, issues with them trying to, put tails on you and all kinds of different things depending on the situation. Abuse charges, child abuse charges, all kinds of.
It's much more complex when somebody is trying to leave an abusive relationship with a disordered person.
Yes.
Having gone through something like that yourself, I think, and again, you and I have had conversations, but I think it's important to explain to our listeners that you found me and our organization online, right?
I did. Yeah, it was, this has been a journey for me, for, finding and learning and becoming a divorce coach and understanding narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. And it was when I was doing all of that I, started thinking, why is there not support for people that are going through this? And that's how I stumbled upon you and the organization. And that was what I'm like, yes, that is absolutely needed. And that's where you and I first connected. Right. Because I think one of the keys to be able to really help somebody in this situation. The only thing we really have going is if you have the knowledge and the information. And in this type of a situation, if you know before your abusive spouse knows that this is what's going to be happening, it's the only time you're ever going to have an upper hand to be able to, whether it's gathering your financial information before they hide it, or just making a plan and making a plan for a safe exit. That takes a lot of maneuvering, and being able to do it before they know is sometimes key.
Exactly. And I think the beauty of Center for Hope is that, we're so fortunate to have providers in different fields, but all related fields, so that we can, wrap our arms around a person who's trying to leave a relationship like this, and they can have the support of an attorney with the knowledge of narcissistic abuse and what it means to divorce or be in a contested custody battle with a disordered person like this. To have the support of somebody like you, who not only lived through this herself, but has now, developed a skill set to help others through it. And, to have a mental health counselor who understands cluster B personality disorders. So Rachel, it's really interesting to me when you and I first started working together in this capacity. I wasn't quite certain how we would complement, with an E, complement one another in the context of helping our clients. But I believe that we have forged a really good relationship at this point, and I am 100% on team divorce coach, okay? Even though I had never used a divorce coach in my practice before. Sure. So I think it's really, I'd like for you to talk about, some of the challenges that you have found in your work of working, with our clients, with Center for Hope clients, and people who are going, through a contested divorce with somebody who is a toxic person. What are some of the special challenges that you have found in working with our clients, and how do you think that adding the divorce coach to the equation helps people who are going through this situation?
Sure. And your reaction once you learned and experience is very, very common for attorneys, because, we sort of joke that we deal with all the stuff that the attorneys don't want to deal with, so that you can focus on the law and focus on your job. Because, let's face it, divorce it's a business of divorce. But for the person going through it, there's so much more, and the emotions are so high. And that's a lot of times where we come in, and that's the challenge. It's heartbreaking, some of the stories that you hear. And it's hard to learn some of the realities that, unfortunately, and this from your experience, things are not always fair, and things don't always turn out the way that we think that they should. So being able to try to help coach a client on focusing on the things that are actually going to help their case and help you do what it is that you're trying to do for them is really important. One of the things that, comes up a lot is, we on this, podcast in with each other, we're very comfortable using terms such as narcissistic personality disorder and toxic personalities and things like that. But I also know that can backfire in the court system when you're in court. If you've got a spouse that's claiming, personality disorders and trying to claim that their spouse, has a specific disorder. So I work with them to focus on the things that are the facts and the things they can prove, and the labels aren't helpful, unfortunately. And so I work with them to really, as I said, get them organized, get them to be credible, so that they are really understanding what the process is. It's a process that they've never experienced before. And there are things that unknowingly they can do that will damage their case. And it's very difficult to explain that sometimes to people.
Sure. And, some of the things that I have noticed with, people who are in this high intensity fight or flight place that, we're all in when we're going through the trauma of trying to separate from a person like this, is that, you constantly feel that you're, being attacked, that if you're not being attacked by the person themselves, you're being attacked by their attorney, you're being attacked by the court system. You know, oftentimes I know clients feel that their own attorney even is not advocating for them the way that they would like to be advocated for. So I think that having you in their corner, you know, that for a lot of the time, you know, that people want to, you know, offload a lot of this emotional stuff onto me. And believe me, being a lawyer in this, you know, working with this population, I believe I'm an empathetic person, but I try to stay in my lane, which is why another reason why Center for Hope is, you know, it works the way that it does, is because, you know, I can say to a client, you know, I really think that's best, something that you should best, you know, talk with Rachel about, and you then can help them get their arms around certain things and be able to, you know, work through things, you know, that more makes more sense to work through with you than to try to work through with their attorney. You know, number one, attorneys are incredibly busy. You know, we just don't have the bandwidth for that kind of thing all the time, nor should we, you know, be waiting in the, you know, minutia of things, where I think you help them to get their, you know, perspective on things so that they can then ask the questions that are really the most important questions to be asked in a legal sense by their attorney. So that's how I feel that you and I, you know, really work well together. And, you know, with regard to being, you know, with people who are very going through these very challenging emotions, I mean, in my personal opinion, I think that anyone who is divorcing, you know, a toxic person or somebody that they think may have NPD, and again, we don't diagnose them, we're not armchair diagnosing them, but we do know from the types of behaviors and situations that our clients are describing, that there are the behaviors that are present, you know, the emotional abuse, the emotional manipulation, the gaslighting, the blame shifting, the smear campaign, you know, sometimes there's physical abuse. So when we see the cluster of behaviors, you know, we know what a person is likely dealing with, so that, you know, we can give them tips on how to deal with a disordered person like this. What do you think, or what would your best piece of advice to anybody that's listening right now and just starting out on their journey? What would you tell somebody? Because like you said, you know, oftentimes people are like, I don't know what to do. And maybe somebody's pushing them in a direction to call a lawyer, and maybe they're not ready to start a divorce. So if they were, you know, they're like, okay, well, there's, you know, a divorce coach. Maybe that's the person I should be speaking to, right? What's your best advice? What would you say?
I would say to educate yourself. It's so, you are in such an emotional state. We call that in coaching, we call that the reptile brain. You're just, you know, you're so overwhelmed and flooded that it's difficult. But I would say first, take a breath. Take a deep breath. This is not something that you want to rush through, whether your spouse does or not. The decisions that get made are going to affect you for the rest of your life. So it is within your best interest to do your research and learn as much as you can about the process and what you're going to need and who the professionals are that you're going to need. And if they need help learning about that, yes, a divorce coach, that's one of the things that I can do. There are many different, as you know, professionals that can make up a team to help somebody when they're going through a divorce. And most people don't even realize that they exist. Why would they? You know, whether it's a certified divorce financial analyst, I didn't know it existed. And, you know, and I can give them the, you know, the experience of, you know, don't make the mistakes that I made and learn from me. You know, here's what I didn't know, and here's what I learned after the fact.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think doing your homework, and really understanding the process and getting, you know, all of your ducks in a row before, if you have that luxury. Now, of course, you know, sometimes people, they've already been served, right? So they don't have that luxury. But I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I just want to qualify what you said about as doing your research. I would caution though, about who you're getting your information from. Friends and family are fantastic. They are a wonderful support system, but they're not always the best to go to for advice on getting a divorce. things change. You know, a 20-year-old divorce from 20 years ago is different than a divorce today. The divorce laws are different. They change, and they're different in different states. As you know, they treat property differently. They treat custody differently. So making sure that you're getting your information from both, a credible source, a recent source, and one that's particular to your area and your state, because as you know, the laws are all different.
Right. Yes, that's great advice. So before we end today, Rachel, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I would just say that I think it's, this organization is fantastic, and I think that people should take advantage of it and find out everything they have to offer. There's a whole wealth of professionals on the staff that are available. I myself offer complimentary consultations. I believe some of the others may as well. But even if you have to spend money for a consultation, it's really money well spent, so that otherwise you'll make mistakes, and mistakes that you need to fix after the fact are so much harder to do, so much more costly. And
I
if you
agree.
can prevent that, it's just, it's worth its weight in gold.
And for people who are listening who may not be residents of New York State, because I just want to qualify this, that, we are incorporated in New York, and our professionals are only licensed to practice in New York. So unfortunately, we can't represent people outside of New York State, but we do have, a wealth of information on our website. A wealth of information about that. We have a quiz that you can take if you think that you may be a victim of this type of abuse, to help you sort of recognize, as you said, when you were talking about your journey, that you didn't even realize that you were a victim. I think that's a very common thing for people as they're moving through this, that they have to reframe, what has gone on in their life, because, most of us are conditioned, well, if we're not being hit, then we're not being abused. So it's a different way of looking at it. It's a different lens. So we have a great quiz on there to help people kind of get their thoughts together to figure out whether, if has these sort of behaviors been happening in your relationship. We also have a glossary of terms to help educate people on narcissism and narcissistic abuse. And we have wonderful videos and a great wealth of information on all of our social media, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, as I said earlier in our introduction. So I think that's all for today. And thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. And to all our listeners, please tune in next time. We're going to be having a whole provider series. Rachel is our first provider, but I hope to be interviewing a new provider each month coming up over the next few months. So thank you, and good night.
Thanks. Good night.